Hello and welcome to today's video. I would like to share with you my favorite brush pens. Now, my name is Susan, and if you follow me, you'll know that every day I draw something new, usually a portrait. And I do my 20-minute routine using these brush pens. So I thought I would share with you some of the learnings I've had and which ones are best when it comes to drawing in a pocket sketchbook like this. The reason I have all of these pens together is because they are the darkest shade. Now, when I'm doing portrait drawing, one thing that I must have is something really dark that's going to accentuate the shadows and make the drawing pop. So that's why I put these all together. And I've also learned to really appreciate using water-based ink when it comes to these brush pens, just because I feel like acrylic or alcohol or other mediums just are not very suitable for the type of paper that I'm using in my daily sketchbook. So with that aside, you know that all of these are essentially water or ink based, and they are the darkest shade with the exception of this one. Now I included this one just because I threw the equivalent darker shade away, but I wanted to include it anyway because it's one of my favorite. Now let's start with, I would say, the Tongbo. This is one of the earliest ones that I've been using. And the reason I use this is just because it was readily available in North America. And what I found with this pen is that, here, I'll show you the tip. It is very sturdy. I wouldn't even call this a brush pen. It is a soft tip though, so it does give you a little bit of grip when you bounce back. And I mean, the way that this pen is being used or intentionally being used is actually Japanese calligraphy. It's a Japanese calligraphy pen. And well, this literally says 笔支柱, like a helper when it comes to using pens. And it's meant for writing Chinese calligraphy or kanji, right? So with the success of this pen, I thought I would discover other kinds of calligraphy pens. You know, Tongbo is not a special brand. There are other brands that make these type of pens, and probably for a lot cheaper too. So then I picked up all of these pens, okay? And these are all very similar in terms of usage, with the exception of this one. I'll explain. So these three are all essentially helping you write better, and they all have a very similar tip. Here, I'll show you. You see? Very similar tip. It's not too big, and it gives you a little bit of a bounce. This one as well. This one is a dual tip. So the idea is you use the lighter shade first to draw, and then if you really think you got it down, then you use a darker shape. And these are all fairly similar. It's a small tip, and it gives a little bit of a bounce back. So it's not very good for shading, as an example, right? So then I would categorize these two, or actually, no, these are very different. This one is actually a calligraphy pen as well, but it's a larger tip. So if you count the width of it, I would say it is significantly larger compared to something like this, okay? So the experience of using these pens are very different. This one is much softer. It's got like a bristle-like tip, whereas this one is quite a bit harder compared to this one. And then we have the Faber-Castell tip. Now just imagine this is black. I would say this tip is probably the most similar to something like this, but still much larger and more flexible. And to be honest, although this is the most expensive, Faber-Castell, like these brush pens are the most expensive, but this is probably my favorite. This is my favorite tip, right? It's not too large, it's not too small, and it gives you a lot of control, yet it also gives you that flexibility of shading it sideways. I find these type of tips to be the best when it comes to drawing in the pocket sketchbook. Okay, and I still have not talked about these two. I'm not very good. I'm not going in any particular order. I just thought that I would go from the easiest to control versus the hardest to control. Now these two, the reason I put them under harder to control is just because of the tip is larger. And you can see that this one is significantly fatter. This tip is not a bristle, it's more of a sponge. The tip of it, when you are touching the paper, it's very easy to create blobs or like a big dot instead of a very thin and controlled line. So that's why I would categorize this one as just a little bit harder. And then lastly, I should include the Tongbo. This is the dual tip brush pens. So on this side, you have a very fat brush tip. And on the other hand, you have a little nib. So I would say this nib is not similar to this, although they look similar, but this one, because it's for calligraphy, right, it has a little bit more of that give, whereas this is very hard, right? This is pretty much just like a liner that you use to outline something. It doesn't really behave like a brush pen. And this one, because of how large, how fat it is incredibly difficult to control. I am currently using this, but it's really just for training my hand because I'm still using it in a very small sketchbook. So I'm trying my best to control my hand such that I'm still able to practice those thin lines, even though this is probably meant for a larger surface area and drawing on a bigger piece of paper or even thicker piece of paper. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is flow. Now, any kind of pen have flow, right? Like as you put it against your paper, against the grain of the paper, and then you draw a line, right? How much ink comes out through that one stroke, that's what I refer to as flow. Now, when it comes to larger nib, typically speaking, that means more flow. That means there's going to be more ink dispersed through that one stroke. And that is precisely the case with these Tongbo water-based pens. They are just a little bit more watery, right? And it's not necessarily bad. I think if you have a thicker, more absorbent paper, then it works well. But if you're using a pocket sketchbook and the paper is not that thick and you don't want it to bleed to the other side, this is not the best, right? Because of how much water or how much ink gets let out. So when you're using these, you got to be very, very careful. You have to make sure that you don't really like smudge and going over it way too many times. You have to make sure that when you're going over sections, you're not going over it way too many times because you honestly risk bleeding through or even ruining the paper that way. Which is not really a problem when it comes to these pens. I would say they are designed on top of paper that are thinner, much thinner. And because they are used for writing, you really don't need to disperse a lot of ink, which I don't know if that's the reason that a lot of people who like to draw in pocket sketchbooks started to use calligraphy pens. But these pens, probably with the exception of this one, but this is also, I know it's not meant for calligraphy, but it also does not disperse a lot of ink all at once. So I always say from a flow perspective, all of these are very good when it comes to using in a thinner weight paper in a small sketchbook. Lastly, I want to talk about how long these pens last and the price point for them. Okay, let me range them in terms of how much I think they cost. A lot of them are very cheap, so I'm gonna just bucket all the cheap ones in one bucket and then kind of group it this way. And a lot of them I got in a set, so it's also really difficult to compare. You probably wouldn't purchase some of them in just like a singular pen. I don't know, maybe in your local store you can do that, but a lot of times I see them come in like a bulk set. Okay, so this is how I would categorize them in terms of price point. These were really, really cheap. They were, so again, I live in Canada, Toronto, and there is a local, kind of like a cheaper, like a homeware / stationery Japanese store called Umomo that I go to, and I bought all of these there. and they were very cheap. They were in the kind of like the calligraphy or hobbyist section of the store. $2 or something like that. $2 Canadian, which is, you know, $1 something USD probably. I don't know. For me, in terms of pens, I think they are considered fairly cheap. Okay, now I got these two in my art supply store. So think of like Michael's or the Sears or Curry's, you know, these art supply stores. So they are marked up. And actually, I think this one I might have gotten on Amazon. I don't remember, but I would say these are like in the art supply range. So if you go to an art supply store and you purchase one of these pens, it's usually in the $3 to $5 per pen range. And exactly pricing, I can't remember. These I would say are the most expensive. I got these in a set, and if you were to purchase them singular, I think they would be more than the $5 range. Now, I don't know for sure because, again, I purchased them in a set, so it's really hard to compare. But I would say these pens are on the pricier side compared with these. In terms of how long you can use these for, so like the bang for your buck. Okay, I think it's really hard to like group them exactly. So I tried my best. These ones, I would say, are really, really good, especially this one. I mean, I used this one for a very long time. And even though it was really, really cheap. This, although performance-wise, it's the best, but lasting me the longest time is the worst. It doesn't last you very long at all, even though the experience of using it is the best. In terms of using it for a longer period of time, it is the shortest, unfortunately. These ones, I grouped them together. I don't know if you remember, but the tip of these are all very, very similar. I don't know if it's because of that, but these, I would just say they are built very similarly and they don't last very long. It's probably because of the ink reservoir. It doesn't, like, that's just how much ink there is, perhaps. But they last you a fairly good amount, probably... If you use it like me every single day, it'll probably last you 4 or 5 months, that kind of thing. This one lasts me like 2 months using it daily. And these last me quite a significant amount of time. I've had this one for years, even though I didn't use it every single day, but it's still very juicy. So the build quality of these pens are very, very good. And these two, I just use them every day for a very long period of time, like definitely over a year. And these two are still very good. Even though, I had to say, even though they're not as juicy as before, here, I'll show you what I mean. I've had these two that you're looking at for a very long time now. And this is kind of the experience that you can get out of these pens now. So you see, like, it still works, but it's not the best. It's not very juicy anymore. Same with this pen. Oh, this is actually better. Here, let me show you a different one. This is exactly the same. There, I think that's easier to tell. The ink in these pens after a while doesn't flow out quite as consistently as before. I mean, can I still use them? Sure, I can, but that unpredictability is causing me to have second thoughts about using them in my drawings. Just because in my 20-minute sessions, I really don't want surprises, right? I wouldn't want to draw halfway and figure out I can't really complete it, which happens before, right? You know, I think these two are the last drawings I did with this pen, and it's really running out of ink at this point. It's really hard to get the ink out in some of these drawings, like how I would want it to go. Especially, you see the hair, it's not my best work, I would say. You know, even this one, like you can clearly tell that the ink is not dispersing it properly. So some of these ones, I was using this pen. You can also see that although there's still ink coming out, but it's kind of blurry, right? It's not giving you the best work. But it tried. I've used it honestly for a very long time. And I quite like using these pens. As you can see, I did a lot of work with them. All right. That's pretty much it. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.